Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. This is Beautiful Literature with Teacher Martha. And I want to hope that you've been following up on the other chapters of the Fathers of Nations, because we are doing an analysis of the same and just the plot analysis, the story, and just understanding exactly what happens chapter after chapter. And today we are looking at chapter 4. And chapter 4 begins from page 46. We'll do very quickly and just having a look at it. And it's an interesting chapter in the sense that we see a lot of office discussions, and like previously, chapter 3, where we had a family, more of a family setting, where we're having Professor Kimani and his family and the events around his family. In this chapter 4, we have the lady that we met in chapter 1, that is Fiona Mackenzie, who is a journalist, who is a reporter. And so we get to meet her and to understand better. Because at the beginning, we met her briefly, and we were left not very sure what kind of a person she is, especially because of her interaction with Dr. Afolabi, which didn't go very well. But in this chapter, we somehow are able to hear her more and to see many faces of her, and we are able to understand what kind of a person she is. And so the last time we met her, her boss had called, and you remember her saying that silly boss has called me. And so she leaves, and in this chapter, therefore, she has left with a taxi, and in a taxi, and she's going to meet her boss in the office. And we are told that her journey between Seamount Hotel, where she was having the interview with Dr. Afolabi, between then and the office, there were a lot of delays, that almost took them over 2 hours. And the reason why they were delayed is because there was a lot of roadblocks, a lot of traffic, and so on. And you know why we're having that is because of the summit that is going on. That is one of the issues that we had talked about earlier, and said that the effects of having this summit in Banjul was one of them is that so many roadblocks were being erected, and so many police checks, security checks, and so on were coming up. And unfortunately, out of these roadblocks is an opportunity for the police to be bribed and to be corrupt and to even harass the people. And that is shown very well on that page 46, where the taxi driver, who is a young man, actually gets totally harassed, and actually they delay more. And we actually are told, what concerns me is how we are told that he disappeared with his taxi behind a wall, where the guards turned him upside down and shook loose change out of his loose robes first before they let him go. So really, these security roadblocks, they are not just for, they are not for what they are intended for, but they are points where the guards, the police, and so on, they use that to get bribed and to harass the motorists, to harass the pedestrians, because even told pedestrians are also going through the check. It's only that for the clearance for the pedestrians was a bit minimal as compared to the others. And so Fiona is waiting for the taxi driver to come so that they can proceed with the journey, and he takes a bit of time, but finally they connect. But what is interesting is the conversation that Mackenzie and the driver are having. And maybe before you even go to the conversation, on page 47 there's a very interesting statement that is there, where she says Miss Mackenzie's taxi driver finally resurfaced. Wary and watchful, he was part of the growing African phenomenon, taxi drivers with university degrees whom the local job market had failed to absorb in the professions that they had trained for. I think that is important for us to note, even as we talk about economic issues and the themes that are the plight of the young people that is going on in this country. It's important for us to note that the taxi drivers, most of them are the young people who have not been able to secure jobs wherever they are and been able to just practice and exercise what they were trained for. And so they resort to taxi driving, which really may not be what they would have wanted to do on another day. And so the conversation between them upsets Mackenzie, because she actually is very upset that he had to bribe the police and the guards for him to be allowed to go through. And was saying, and why would you bribe them? That was so wrong. It is so evil. And so the taxi driver is actually very fed up by Fiona and says, actually, no, you know what I will do? When I'm going back, I will make sure I address that issue with them and let them know it was wrong for me to bribe you. It was wrong for you to ask for the bribe. Of course, he was being sarcastic. Of course, he knew that is not going to happen. He says, do you know what I'm going to do on my way back, Miss Mackenzie? I'm going to ask the guards I bribed to arrest me for bribing them. Of course, now, what does that tell you? It tells you where the common people are, the common citizens are. They feel like this bribing is really part of life. What am I supposed to do when a police asks for a bribe? Do I go through in tantrums and crying or reporting them? It's a sense of hopelessness where the citizens feel we are in the masses of all these people. There's nothing we can do about it. And so of course, Mackenzie realizes there is nothing she can do about it, and she decided to let that issue go. But of course, that explains to us where the country is as far as those issues of corruption are concerned. And so therefore, the next episode, we realize that now Mackenzie is able to get to the office, and we meet her colleagues in the office. And remember, she's working for Gambian News, but from this chapter, we realize that actually she's been moved from the Gambian News. She's moved to the Voice of America, which is a better paying employer, and she's actually more privileged to be there. And we are told that is on page 49. The VOA would be paying her a salary totally dwarfing the 2 beans the Gambian News had been paying her. According to them, the payment from Gambian News was actually 2 beans, so they are going to pay better. And so we meet Mr. Robert Manley, who is the chief of the bureau, who is really like the supervisor of Fiona. And what is interesting, maybe just to note, is how Mr. Robert is very impressed by Fiona. Actually, if you look at page 50, he speaks very highly about her. He actually says that Mr. Manley says it's the other young man. He says that Mr. Manley says you're the best reporter in town. And actually, just down there, he says Mr. Manley resumed, Miss Mackenzie, a summit of Africa's heads of state will begin shortly at the Pinnacle Hotel, he said. That's the breaking story I mentioned a while ago. I know you're going to cover it for the Gambian News. Now we want you to cover it for us, the VOA, instead. And he looked at her and said, why did we choose you? Well, we chose you basically for 2 reasons. Number 1, your professional expertise, it will be needed. Number 2, your African background will come in handy. And so, looking at all the people that they would have hired, for them they chose to pick Fiona because they felt like maybe she's the best person that is able to do that. And again, even their conversation, we are able to see Fiona in a different way because even this young man, there's the young man that he's having to deal with, that is Nicholas Sentinel, is the technical guy who he's introduced to by his immediate supervisor, that is Mr. Robert. And so he's also very impressed by her accent. Remember, she was not raised in Zambia, and she was raised in Scotland, and so therefore that's why maybe her accent is actually it's preferred, unlike the fellow news people or the reporters in Gambian News. And so therefore we find that she's standing out and seems like she's doing very well. And so in that conversation, I don't want to go into the conversation they had, but ideally you realize that she is they are doing quite a bit. Looking at Nick, let me call him Nick. Nick is in charge of the electronic transmissions, and he has something that they're calling the silent listener, and he says that this can catch all the wired transmissions, and he can monitor zillions of aired messages daily. I mean, he can be able to tell who is saying what to who, if at all he's interested in following up. And of course, out of that, we realize that actually the conversation that Fiona had with Dr. Afolabi was actually recorded. It was actually captured. And even for him calling the boss a silly one, that was also captured. And he feels, of course, you can see Mackenzie trying to protest and saying, I think that is invading people's privacy and so on. And of course, Nick tries to protest and says, no, we don't break into people's bedrooms. We just do whatever is available in the public, and so on. And so you can read on to hear what it entails, the work that Sentinel is doing, and what Fiona is supposed to, what her role is. And out of this, you realize that as a very interesting turn of things, that is on page 55, where one of the parts that was captured by Nick in his recordings or in his work, the silent listener caught, that is on page 55, the last paragraph, the silent listener caught a bit of conversation because the speakers were using wireless cell phones, believing them to be more secure secure than the hotel's landline. In this case, the landline was in fact more secure than the cell phones after all. That is ironic, isn't it? And so you realize that it's actually showing us how frail the systems are. That actually for them, Dr. Afolabi and his 4 men, they are talking using the landlines, and they think that the landlines, the mobile phones, because they are thinking that the landlines can be tapped, the landlines are not secure. And in this case, actually, according to Nick, actually when you use the mobile phone, it is one that is not more secure. And so basically what we are trying to see is the supremacy that he has. He's able to access whatever information that he would want to access at whatever time. And so, of course, Miss Mackenzie is briefed on what he needs to do, and especially regarding the summit that is going on. For them, they have an important assignment, and that assignment is making sure that everything, if there is anything anybody is planning, they can be able to get that intel. They can be able to hijack it before it happens and be able to ensure that they are not caught off guard. And that is their work. And so I would want to move on to the next episode on the same, where we realize that after the meeting, after work, after Fiona is done with the office, he gives a call to Dr. Afolabi, and they want to have a meeting. And of course, Dr. Afolabi is in bed and he wants to sleep. And of course, he gets a phone call, and Fiona is the one who wants to talk to him. And of course, he's not very happy because the previous meeting they had, it didn't go down very well. And so he delays and takes his time, and he comes down from the hotel and hoping to meet her at the lobby, and they can have their brief meeting. And so out of this conversation, when he's coming down, he realizes this girl is not even here. Why was she calling me and she's not even here? And he's very happy to go back to the hotel. But he's on his way to the hotel, he hears a girl who is screaming and who is protesting and saying that she should be let go, and she's crying for help. But of course, he doesn't think that is any of his business. But again, I think the human nature in him, he's asking the clerk, the person who is manning the desk at the reception, and saying, why are you not helping this girl? Can't you see that she's in trouble? Then you should be able to help her. And see, the guy is asking, why would I even get involved in something like that? It's none of my business. I would lose my job by trying to get involved in something like that. And what does that also tell us about socially, the social fabric? That actually we are at a situation, and most of those things are the ones that happen even in our country, where something is happening to you on the streets, and we see so much of it happening. Like someone is being carjacked, someone is being mugged, someone is being beaten. And what do? Instead of helping the person, we are very busy taking videos with our phones, and you are wondering, those who are taking the video, why are you not helping? Do you even see clips where a child is being beaten, a child is being, brutalized, and there's no one who is going to rescue, but you are able to access that information because someone recorded it? And I think it's the same culture that is here, where even if you get killed while I watch, it is not a problem. It's actually none of my business. But Dr. Afolabi doesn't feel that way. But he really feels like he needs to help. But again, he doesn't know this girl because she's actually being called Joy. But at that moment is when this Joy calls out his name and actually saying, please help me. He will assault me. Kindly help me. And this time, this man who is carrying this girl called Joy is actually taking her up the stairs. So you can imagine what kind of assault that is going to happen. And so when Dr. Afolabi hears his name, he actually realizes this is not even a Joy. This is Fiona Mackenzie, who was supposed to meet. And of course, he does not let that issue pass and pretend that you annoyed me in the previous meeting that we had with you, so I will not even help you. And we can see that Dr. Afolabi comes through and is very kind, and is actually saving Fiona from that man. And actually he called, my real name is Leo. That is on page 59. My real name is Leo, but people prefer to call me the Liberian Mauler. So if you know what is good for you, you will scurry back to the hole you came from. Who are you anyway? And actually, when you look at that conversation by this Liberian, this Leo, let's call him Leo. This Leo, he's very arrogant, he's abusive, he's everything, and he talks very bad things. You can read that on page 60. He talks very bad things about Dr. Afolabi, and actually is so, he's so sure that he's going to fight him, and he feels very superior, and actually challenges Dr. Afolabi into a fight. And Dr. Afolabi does not want to really fight. Was not his thing to do. But finally, he's forced to get into a fight. And finally, because of his lack of tact, he's able to get defeated. The Mauler gets defeated, and Dr. Afolabi and Fiona, they get to his room where he was living. And actually, Dr. Afolabi has also been hurt a bit. He's injured a bit on his face. And so when they get to the room, Fiona is trying to clean him up and trying to make him get well. I mean, just clean up from the wounds and the scars, the scratches that he had. And from that, we realized that they didn't even manage to have their meeting, so to speak. But seems like their meeting is going to carry on in this room. And something very interesting happens with Dr. Afolabi. I don't know what kind of a character you don't want to describe him. When Fiona goes to the toilet, to the bathroom to clean up, and when she comes back, she finds Dr. Afolabi has already settled down. He's actually sleeping on the couch, and he's leaving the bedroom for her. I mean, the room for her, the bed for her, and it says, you can sleep on the bed, I'll sleep on the couch. And so out of that, it's where Fiona, I think, finds that very strange and asks, "Nah, so you are married? You're acting as if you have a wife." And so I don't know how that describes Fiona, her personal, her social character. I would want to hear what you think about it. But out of this dialogue between the two of them is actually when we get to learn that actually Dr. Afolabi divorced. He actually has no wife now, and he divorced, and she was American. She was called Pamela, and she divorced, and we are not told much what happened, but their relationship, he's no longer having a wife, and maybe that is not why that he does not want to sleep with, share a bed with her, but maybe just because that is not what he really wanted at that moment. Maybe he felt like maybe he has a bigger mission that is ahead of him and didn't want to get distracted. But out of this, we realize that as I wind up, we realize that Fiona is very happy that Dr. Afolabi has actually helped her. I actually am imagining you find yourself in that kind of a situation where someone you don't know each other. In fact, you're not good friends, because actually in the previous encounter, it didn't go down very well. And you're in a crisis, and actually I don't know, this guy, the way he looks very aggressive and very insulting. If he was able to go with Fiona into the room, I don't know, that would be a different story altogether. So the saving that happened, I think Dr. Afolabi did well. So Fiona at this point feels indebted to just pay back and help him, and so she breaks ethics and work ethics, and decides to tell him, by the way, this whatever it is you're doing, please know that your conversation is being recorded. And so she raises that with him, and out of the reason why she's able to bring that up is because of a conversation, a phone that he picked. Dr. Afolabi, he had a call from Pastor Chineke, and Pastor Chineke was not very happy because previously Dr. Afolabi, through the name of the guide, had tried to sound very, very, very domineering, telling him that I saw you in a pub. What were you doing there? You say you're taking a Pepsi, just like trying to patronize him. And Pastor was not having it. Why would you question me about going to wherever I went? I can do whatever I want to do. I can take whatever I want to take. So I think Pastor is calling back to follow up on that conversation. And Dr. Afolabi is not very happy. And actually out of here is when we realize the guide that we met in chapter 1 and chapter 2, actually the guide is Dr. Afolabi. At least now we know the voice and the face and the name behind the guide, and so on. So in this conversation, out of that call is where Fiona tries to guide Dr. Afolabi about the work that she's doing and the recordings that is captured. And so that doesn't make Dr. Afolabi very happy, because he actually feels he didn't even want to look over interested. He actually pretended not to care about that information. But at the back of his mind, he got a bit worried, because him, because of where he was with Path Alpha and Way Omega, his was a very sensitive, it was a double deal. He was double dealing both of them. And so he felt like he does not want to be caught. And so with this young man, the Nick Sentinel, he, with his information he's gathering with his machine, he felt like I may end up being caught up, I may end up being exposed. So Dr. Afolabi started paying great attention. He feared the youth she was describing might have uncovered him. And so Dr. Afolabi dismisses her and does not want to carry on with that discussion, lest he betrays himself, and tells her, I think it is important for us to sleep, then tomorrow we can have that conversation. And so this chapter 4 basically was just a highlight of Fiona Mackenzie and her experiences at work, and just helping us to catch up with the other characters who are heavily involved with the summit. Remember, all these is revolving around the summit. The reason why Mr. Robert, Nick Sentinel, and the VOA and all those people, they are all doing to support what is going on in the summit, just to make sure that everything goes on well. So basically that is it with chapter 4. I hope that you understand it well or better now. And if you have any question, do not hesitate to ask. And maybe just like I would want to ask at the end of the chapter, like I said, I would want you to try to describe, what do you think about Fiona right now? In the other previous chapter, we found her being very casual with Dr. Afolabi, trying to offer information that actually she was not given. Dr. Afolabi was not interested. But now the Fiona we see here, we see a lady who is focused, who is polished in her work, who is very firm, does not want to do bribes and so on. And also someone who is very focused, and someone who knows her thing, and she does not also want to mess up with her work. What extra thing do you see as far as especially her social skills? Apart from her work, what is this particular thing that stands out as far as her social skills are concerned? Her social character traits, what is that that stands out for you as far as Fiona Mackenzie is concerned? So that is it for chapter 4. I want to hope that you're better now. In the next one, we are going to look at chapter 5. Please stay around and let's hear what chapter 5 has for us. Thank you. See you then.